I typically end my podcasts the way I'm going to start this one. Empowered people empower people. With your message in hand and your marketing skills sharpened, my goal is that you can take action and empower others. While I truly believe that empowered people empower people, I also believe that empowered people empower themselves. As the owner and chief strategist of the Empower PR Group, I'm in the business of empowerment. And today I want to let you in on a little secret. My favorite way to empower myself is by reading. Who would have thought? Hey, I'm Stephanie Fager, and I'm obsessed with empowering you, the nonfiction author, with impactful marketing strategies to help you take your important message and share it with those who desperately need it, want it, and will buy it. Today, I'm sharing with you a way I get empowered, and it's through reading. Since I learned how to read, I could always be found with a book in my hands. Just ask my mom. And as I've grown, that's remained the same. Just ask my husband. Books build bridges. They break down walls. In fact, I have seen them shatter walls. They invite you into a new way of thinking. They whisk you away into make-believe. They spark imagination. They challenge you. They are doors to new opportunities. I believe that books are powerful, and I believe that they hold power both through writing them and reading them. During this pop-up episode, I'm going to prove that to you as I share my favorite insights from a recent book I've read and how it could push you, author friend, to become empowered. Are you ready? This is the Empowered Author Podcast. I've heard people talk about terms such as working in your zone of genius, taking the big leap, and crashing through your upper limit problem. And I've begun to implement the impact of those phrases in my life and in the lives of those that I work with. But I wanted to know more about what these phrases meant and specifically how authors could leverage their value. So I added Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap, into my Amazon cart and my reading list. And boy, am I glad that I did. You know how people say that a book is better than its companion movie? I mean, take Harry Potter, for instance, or The Hunger Games. I was completely shocked by The Maze Runner, as it has nothing to do, the movie I'm speaking of, than the book at all. It's kind of crazy. And The Da Vinci Code, that also wasn't anything that I expected. In my humble opinion, and I bet in yours too, since you're an author as well, books are always better, right? Am I right? And I think that's also true when it comes to the concepts that I've been working within that are highlighted in the book, The Big Leap. I had an idea of what the zone of genius meant, and I have been aspiring to work within mine as much as possible. But I didn't realize how it was interconnected with this upper limit problem. And I even began to notice how my own body and my life was trying to stop me from reaching this zone of genius. Then the completely unexpected deep dive into Einstein time has left my brain swirling with insights and opportunities and potential for myself and for the authors that I get to work with. So today I want to share my thoughts on each of those three with you. Before I dive into my three rather large key takeaways, let's do a brief overview of the book itself and of its author. So just do a quick Google search of Gay Hendricks, and it will inform you that he's a psychologist who focuses primarily on personal growth, relationships, and body intelligence. I think this is really important to know because throughout his book, The Big Leap, he peppers in specific examples from psychology work, specifically with business leaders and individuals that are seeking relationship support. I found that really interesting. So understanding that that is built in to his psychology practice is really enlightening. He's also written several books, many with his wife, and likely I'll probably dive into more of his books now that I've become fascinated with how his brain thinks and how he tackles life. But The Big Leap, so this book left me dreaming of possibilities and more aware of what typically tries to hold me back of attaining those possibilities. I think this book is really a challenge for each of us to find what makes us uniquely amazing and leverage that gift to change the world, change the lives of others, and in the process, to change our own life. So this book is filled with hope, which happens to be the middle name of my daughter, so I kind of love it. And I don't know about you, but when it comes to my personal and professional life, I'm always up for a healthy dose of some hope, paired with specific actionable steps that's going to help you get there. That's what this book is filled of. As I reflect on my 3 favorite parts of the book, I'm drawn to the 3 overarching concepts that unify the book's purpose. Those include identifying and breaking through your upper limit problem, understanding, finding, and living in your zone of genius, and becoming the master and creator of your own time through Einstein time. That's like a tongue twister in and of itself. Say Einstein time 10 times without laughing or stumbling, and you get a gold star today. But don't worry, if all of those words sound like gibberish to you by the end of this episode, rest assured they won't. But let's start with the upper limit problem. Gay calls it ULP, ULP, and he has had a group that he was training and working with once that called it gulp. So anytime that they were noticing an upper limit problem, they would call it gulp. I thought that was kind of funny and fun. You might want to too. But I don't know about you. I began to notice in reading this book that I tend to notice when things are going really well, something really annoying happens. Like I get sick, or a project becomes overly complicated, or my boys decide that it's time to get into a fight, which tends to happen every day now that I have 6, 8, and 10-year-olds living in this house. Or I get annoyed by something, like small in the house, and I start picking a battle with the hubby. For whatever reason, something happens when things are going really, really well. Well, according to Gay, this isn't always really random coincidences. Instead, he says this actually could be an upper limit problem, a gulp. Let me quote from the book to give you some insights here. Gay says, each of us has an inner thermostat setting that determines how much love, success, and creativity that we allow ourselves to enjoy. When we exceed our setting, we will often do something to sabotage ourselves, causing us to drop back into the old familiar zone where we feel secure. I found that very enlightening. And he acknowledges that thermostat, or another word for the upper limit problem, tends to be programmed based on insights from your childhood. And they're likely things that you don't even know you have or you're dealing with if you don't take time to reflect upon them. And I think that's true with anything in life. If we don't take time to reflect, how will we know and understand? But maybe that's just me and this introspective human over here. But I really think it's important when we think about our upper limit problems. So he says that these setbacks, we're talking about when you get sick, when the kids get in a fight, when you pick a fight, when something crazy happens, when things shouldn't be, that these setbacks keep us away from our zone of genius, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But first, I want to highlight these false beliefs that Gay mentions, which could trigger the upper limit problem. Okay, so just level set for a minute. Upper limit problem happens when you are on the verge of greatness, and then something happens and it you topple over. I mean, listen, please tell me I'm not alone in dealing with this. I know I'm not, because Gay wrote an entire book on this. But he says that there's typically 4 things that are at the root of why these things happen, why we actually create these problems to ourselves. And he calls them, our false beliefs. I relate really intensely with the first one, and that is feeling fundamentally flawed. This is this false belief that you just aren't good enough or worthy enough. So when you start to feel abundant happiness or success, this belief reminds you that, those feelings are for others. They're not for you. I don't know about you, but do you feel that way sometimes? Because I do. And when that happens, I find then I've overcomplicated something, or I've not been able to achieve something, or I just stop. And that's likely because of this false belief. The second false belief that he acknowledges is this belief that full success, if you really live in your zone of genius, it could cause you to be disloyal to your roots, your heritage, your family, and people would abandon you. Now, this is not a false belief I understand, and I realize, and actually Gay shares, typically most people have 1 or 2 false beliefs. This is not one that makes sense in my world, but I know for other people it does, and it holds them back. The third false belief is believing that the more success you have, the bigger burden you become. It's this phrase, the more money, more problems, right? Well, that goes even deeper, thinking that it starts with thinking that you already feel like you're a burden to other people. And if you become more successful, you might be even a bigger burden. It's a false belief, y'all, not real. Number 4, finally, this fear of outshining other people. You don't want to outshine another person and become the one that's in the spotlight getting all this attention. So this might be another false belief that if you attain success, like if you live in your zone of genius, you would be holding yourself back, or you would be holding other people back from being in the spotlight. You would be getting all that attention. So just talking about these false beliefs to me feel really funny, to be honest right now, but they are total truth. And the more you dig into upper limit problems, the more you'll identify with one or two. I'm curious which one is an upper limit problem in your life. Of course, like I shared with you, mine is this being fundamentally flawed. That's the one I relate most to, but I'm curious which one you relate most to. And I would actually love to hear from you. So find me on LinkedIn. I am at Stephanie Feger on LinkedIn. I'd love to know which upper limit problem you always try to tackle and move forward with. But understanding upper limit problem issues and false beliefs, this is great, but recognizing when they creep in is really pivotal to changing them. So it's one thing to know it. It's another thing to do something from it. We want to change it. That's why we are diving into this professional development. That's why I want to do this episode, because I want to help you be able to do that, to make those changes. So in the book, the author acknowledges a few notes on how you can spot an upper limit problem when it's coming. And the nice thing about spotting those is that you have the ability to tweak them. So he mentions things like worry, deflection, criticism, blame, fighting, even getting sick or getting hurt. That if you notice those things happening in your life, I want you to pause and ask yourself, is this real? Or is there something happening that's holding you back from attaining success and the abundance that you seek? Worry, for instance, is my big one. I've always been a worry wart. And worry in and of itself can stop you in your tracks. So now that I know when I notice worries coming on, or when I'm picking a fight with someone, or even when I don't feel well, not saying that being sick isn't real, but there are times when your body creates sickness to hold you back from achieving greatness. It's kind of wild, but it's true. And it can happen. So being aware of those, identifying them, that allows you to change them. So how is this relevant to you, my author friend? Well, if you've ever written a book, you know the power of the upper limit problem. If you have writer's block, which in my opinion, it could be a upper limit problem. So how is the block of creativity impacting your movement to attain the success you seek? It could happen very intensely and unexpectedly. Another one that I notice regularly is the fear of self-promotion. So in marketing, you have to talk about what you do, or how in the world will someone know what you offer? It's kind of kindergarten, elementary logic. We have to talk about it or no one will know. But for some people out there that I get to work with, there's this fear of, if I share information with the world, how will it produce what I want? Will it produce the outcome that I want, or will it do something that I don't want? And so there's this fear of rejection. So instead of trying, I see many authors hide behind it and not even try. So that could be a major upper limit problem. Or what about after you write a book and you're ready to build a consistent revenue stream from it? That could mean you form a business, you're dabbling in professional speaking, or you create another book, right? You may be on this high from your book's launch, and then you find yourself sick and unable to do something that you want to. It impacts your timeline, it impacts your happiness, it can impact everything. So I have to share a story with you. When my first book came out, I'll never forget the evening that it became a #1 bestseller on Amazon. It was amazing. I was crying. I was so emotional about it. For whatever reason, I had to leave the house that night, and I was on the way home and I was overwhelmed. Like the amount of energy I put towards launching my book and the emotional toll that it was taking was weighing on me. I started to feel sick. And then something really uncool happened. It's embarrassing now, but I'm going to share it with you. I was pulling into my neighborhood, which was notorious for people who would go down the main road and speed through it because it's a straight shot. And I was notorious for going a little too fast. And there happened to be a police officer hanging around, lurking in the shadows, and he got me. He pulled me over, and I think that was my breaking point. Because here I had this abundance of success and happiness, and my upper limit problem had to creep in. So this police officer pulls me over. I ended up knowing him, which this is what happens when you live in a small community. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. But I ended up telling him, I became a sob story. And this amazing day of my life turned into, oh, woe is me. And I cried. And the police officer pretty much was like, Stephanie, just go. This is a warning, a warning, and move along. Like, he didn't want to put up with my ridiculous mess, but that was an upper limit problem issue. And I realized that now, that I had this fundamental thought process that why would I deserve such success that I had to sabotage it? And that happened that night. I didn't get a ticket, by the way. And I am forever grateful for that police officer for giving me a warning and moving on. But upper limit problems are a problem, and they don't really ever fully go away. But if you can spot them, you can acknowledge them, and then you can compartmentalize them so you can move past them. And you, nonfiction author, you have a big dream. You have so much impact to make. People need you and your message. Don't let the gulp stop you from achieving it. Alrighty, let's move to my second key takeaway, which is understanding, finding, and living in your zone of genius. So this upper limit problem shows up most when you're on the verge of living in your zone of genius. So I want to take a minute and dissect what that is exactly. Consider grabbing a piece of paper and a pencil. And if you don't, do this visually in your mind while we're walking through this. But I want you to draw a box. And then I want you to draw a line vertically to break the box into 2 equal parts. And then a line horizontally to break it into 4 equal parts. Yes, this is the homeschooling mom in me teaching you how to make 4 equal parts from one box. So you have the capacity to live, to work, and to play in life in these 4 boxes. I'm going to walk you through them. One of those boxes is what is called your zone of incompetence. So this is a box filled with activities that you're just not good at. Others are amazing at tackling these, but they're just not your strengths. I feel like early in my career, there was this big push on identifying your weaknesses and working to improve those. And then I read the StrengthsFinder book, which is an amazing book, by the way, and I realized it would be so much smarter for all of us to invest our energy in focusing on your God-given strengths instead of your weaknesses, because let's make what we do great better and stop focusing on trying to change the things that we're just inherently incompetent in. And so that's what this box is. You could try these activities, but they're probably going to take you quadruple the time than someone who loves these. This could include your finances or your house cleaning. Maybe you're just not good at either of those. For some, it's actually writing content. So I know, as an author, this might not make sense to you, but there are people who are I want to write a book, but I'm just not good at writing. I need a ghostwriter. For those who hear that I homeschool my kids, they note that homeschooling is definitely in their zone of incompetence. And for the lady who has told me that she would rather clean toilets than market her book, I would say marketing would fall in this box for her as well. So you definitely shouldn't spend your energy in your zone of incompetence because, quite frankly, it's not going to get you anywhere. So delegate it. You'll be more productive and you'll be happier in the end. So that's box number 1. All right, the second box is your zone of competence. So these activities are things that you're decent at, but others are likely way better. It could be their zone of genius or their zone of excellence, but sure, you could probably do them, but the question is, should you? My business coach, she's got a phrase she uses regularly, and I like to adopt it at times, but she reminds me daily that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, and I think that falls here in the zone of competence. So sure, you can post on social media, but do you love doing it? Do you understand how the algorithms work? Is it the best use of your time? Maybe, but maybe not. Early in my writing career, I was determined to only use photography that aligned with my content of photos that I took. I love taking pictures. I have a nice camera, or at least it was nice a decade ago. Things have changed since. And so for all my blogs, I would take photos and I would include those photos in all of them. So sure, I can take a photo, but it's not my life's work. It doesn't fill me up and make me want to burst with joy. I love it, but it's not my zone of genius. So now, the moment that I decided to give up that all of my photos were needed in all of my content, I gave up that pressure and it gave me time to be able to focus on writing really awesome content. And then I could just use stock photography that aligned with my brand. It was like no big deal. And I don't think it changed anything for anybody else. And it gave me some freedom. So I also have to laugh here because I have to share a story with you in regards to website design. You probably heard this from me, but I've got to tell you again. I was determined when I wrote my first book that I was going to create my own website because, budget, right? I was concerned about the budget. So I spent time doing this. I had no idea. Had I known in retrospect how long it took and how much energy it took to learn from the beginning, I wouldn't have done it. I would have invested in somewhere else, but I didn't. So I dove in and spent 3 months, every waking moment, working on the website. I mean, really 3 months in that first year of my book coming out, just making a website, nothing else. The website looked really nice, but it had major flaws. It wasn't mobile optimized. If you changed the size of the website, the photos wouldn't size properly. It was honestly, I thought it was beautiful, but it was a hot mess, especially now that I know how websites should work. But it was a hot mess. So now I've realized I can create a website. I know a lot about websites, but my zone of genius around websites is strategy around it. And then I collaborate with an amazing web developer on my team who website design is her zone of genius. And she gets to do that. And there is so much power in letting go of this particular box for me. All right. The third box is your zone of excellence. And this is a tricky box because many people live in this box their whole life. This box is filled with activities that you're really great at and that you can be successful at by helping others with. But this box is a dangerous trap. If you stay here, you're missing something big and you're just not going to feel fully satisfied. So have you ever thought, is there something more I'm supposed to be doing? I'm successful, but there's something more, this yearning feeling. Yeah, you're probably living in your zone of excellence box and you're striving for this zone of genius. So this is how I felt before I wrote my first book. I was actually working in corporate America and was really great at what I did. I had really excelled in my career. I was financially stable, but something wasn't satisfying and I didn't know what it was. So in the middle of the night, I was pregnant with my kiddos at the time. I would wake up with pregnancy insomnia and I would just write. And I didn't know why I was writing, but I just did because I needed to get something out. I needed it to be a cathartic outlet. And I did. And I realize now, years later, after I was writing in silence, that I was writing a book. And that book was meant to change everything in my life. I tried really hard to not write that book. For years, I tried to ignore this need, and I'm so glad I gave in because when I did, it took me into my zone of genius. And writing a book that you're working on, it might do that for you too. Okay, so before we dive into the fourth box, which is the box we want to be in, I want you to either take your mental eraser or your physical eraser and your pencil, and I want you to erase the two sides of this box that aren't connected to the others. Because this box is not meant to hold you in. It's meant to give you creative freedom. This is your zone of genius. So to find your zone of genius, Gay poses several questions. I'm going to share them with you here. I want you to think about them. The question number 1, what do I love to do? You love it so much that you can do it for a long time and not get bored. Question number 2, what work do I do that doesn't seem like work? You would do it. If money wasn't a factor, you would do it just because you love it. Number 3, in my work, what produces the highest ratio of abundance and satisfaction as it relates to the amount spent? This is a pivotal question to ask. Number 4, what is my unique ability? What is something that you can do in your area that really not many people can? For me, this zone of genius, I found when I could blend my love of a lot of things and my skills on a lot of things. Been able to blend my love for books, which I've had my whole life, with my love for expressing thoughts, feelings, and actions through the written word, which really became a cathartic outlet for me, with my skill set for marketing, which is an industry I've worked in for years. I would say when I blend all of that, strategy is really where my zone of genius lives, and it comes naturally. And I'm never not full with 1,000 ideas there. I get really pumped, actually. If we have the chance to get on a marketing strategy session, you'll realize this, because I just am beaming and full of so many ideas and opportunities. It's my zone of genius. And leading a team of people to help implement those is really the name of my game. But what is the zone of genius for you? So you wrote a book, you're writing a book, or one day you want to. That's why you're here, and that's amazing. But it's the book's message that's going to give light to your zone of genius. Why are you writing this book? What passion are you sharing? And what from that book provides you, and that message provides you immense joy? Many of us are writing a book because we have an ability to do something or to be something that others have asked us to share. Like they've acknowledged, look, you can do this and I can't figure this out. Write a book. That might be a glimmer into your zone of genius. All right, my last key takeaway took me by surprise, and that is becoming the master and creator of your own time through Einstein time. I have to say that slowly. The country accent mixed with those two words. It's not a beautiful mix. It's a recipe for chaos. But time, this is something I constantly feel like I don't have enough of. I don't know about you, but I want more time. I want time to write, but where is the time? I want time to play with the kids, but time feels fleeting. I want to do all the things, but time feels finite. There's just never enough of it. Or is there? So Gay mentioned Einstein time, and I was intrigued. He posed the question as to if time is really real. Or is it something that we say is out there and we are in here? Is time tangible, or is it something that is out of our control? Or he asked, what if it wasn't out of our control? He actually proposes that time is something that doesn't control us. It's actually something we create. And I had to pause for a minute because I thought, all right, you might be living in the clouds. Like, is that real? But the more that I dug in, the more I realized it was truth. So I want you to think about a time that you just felt like you were like in heaven, like great things were happening. You were doing something you immensely love and time just felt like it stood still. Or you looked at the clock and you couldn't believe how fast time went. Like time wasn't real at that moment. So this happens to me when I write something that I love. So for instance, I can get lost in a writing trance. And this happened in 2020 when I wrote the companion guide for my book, Color Today Pretty, and I did it in one sitting. Like I've wanted to write a guided journal for a long time, but the time, no pun intended, wasn't ready. This day, I remember it was the day before Thanksgiving because I had so much I really needed to do, but instead I stopped and I wrote. And time meant nothing to me then. Deadlines could wait. I had a book to write. Now I work in time blocking, which works many times, but sometimes it can limit my creativity. So Gay says you don't need that. That when you work and live in your zone of genius, you actually are more productive in less time, which gives you more time to work on other things. So he shares, this is quoted from his book, when we switch to Einstein time, we take charge of the amount of time we have. We realize that is where time comes from. We embrace this liberating insight that since I'm the producer of time, I can make as much of it as I need. So the truth is that when we decide that to live in our zone of genius, when we become an Einstein, we realize that we can make adjustments within it to maximize the time we have. So this whole adage, you find time for the things you prioritize, it's really true, but you can also control how you feel about time. I am perpetually a late person when it comes to personal stuff because professionally, I don't work in that place. So, it's kind of like a nurse who's great at work but comes home and when their kids get sick, they're like, just put a Band-Aid on it, move on, right? So I am like that personally with my family. They kind of come to expect that when I say I'm going to be there, add, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes sometimes. But I also have 3 kids, so give me a break, right? There are many times I'm schlepping the kids to piano practice or tutoring or what have you, and I just feel like I need a few extra minutes. There have been times that I've just closed my eyes and prayed, God, will you just give me a few minutes, please? Because I need 5 extra minutes. And weirdly enough, at that point, I feel so in the moment. I take deep breaths and feel like time stops. It's really crazy. I haven't told anybody yet that except my husband, because he doesn't think I'm crazy. So y'all make a promise to me you won't think I'm crazy when you hear this. But I find that time slows down, and it's proof that I can create some time, and I think God's helping out in the mix. But to make this pivot, Gay recommends we go on a time diet. So he doesn't want us to talk about time in terms of, I don't have enough of it. And instead, just do your zone of genius work and let the rest fall into place. Like, how freeing is that? So who would I recommend this book for? Well, I'll likely recommend it for any and all authors I work with directly. To be honest, I think we all need to be challenged to identify our zone of genius and make incremental movement to working within it. And it really helps me when I work one-on-one with authors, help them identify their zone of genius. And if they already know some of their upper limit problems, it helps too. So understanding that may possibly be one of the most important aspects of this book, in my opinion. If you're finding yourself struggling with accomplishing goals that you seek, maybe you have a goal, an upper limit problem, and this book will probably help you uncover it. And if you want to be more productive, live a more fulfilled life, find greater success than you thought possible, I think this book would be a great fit for you too. So I like to end the what I'm reading segments with my favorite quote from the book. And my favorite quote from the book, The Big Leap, really put time into perspective for me, and success in perspective too. So Gay shares, you'll never have enough money to buy all the stuff you don't really need, and you'll never have enough time to do all the things you really don't want to do. Gay shares that quote in a chapter that talks about Einstein time and how when you shift how you see time from it owning you to you creating it, you realize that life is about identifying your zone of genius and living 100% in it. When you do, you begin to shift how you spend your time and your money to align accordingly. So I'd love to know your thoughts. How are you spending your time or money that you don't want to anyway? And how do you plan to make that shift so you can live, work, and enjoy your zone of genius? Share that with me on LinkedIn. I can't wait to hear. Take the time to read the book before watching the movie, or after if you must, and take time to read the book's concepts that you seek to implement. They will give you much more context and deeper insights into how you can put all of it into action. That's how this book was for me, The Big Leap, and I think how it could be for you. If you're ready to embrace hope and the reality that there is more, you can be more, and the world is your oyster, dive into The Big Leap. It surely will not disappoint you. All right, empowered friend, never stop being empowered, because empowered people empower people. I've empowered you. All right, now go pick up a book and empower yourself even more.